is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
The Taliban has moved swiftly to control parts of Afghanistan after coalition troops abandoned bases they've used for decades. The U.S. Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, admits it doesn't look good.
There clearly is a narrative out there that the Taliban are winning. In fact, they are propagating an inevitable victory on their behalf. They're dominating a lot of the airwaves on that sort of thing. I would tell you that as of today, more or less, I guess it's about 212, 213, it's in that range, 200s. The district centers are in Taliban control. It's about half of the 419 that are out there. You've got 34 provincial capitals in Afghanistan. None of them have been seized as of today by the Taliban, although the Taliban is putting pressure on the outskirts of probably about half of them, 17 of them, in fact. And what they're trying to do is isolate the major population centers. They're trying to do the same thing to Kabul. And roughly speaking, order of magnitude, a significant amount of territory has been seized over the course of 6, 8, 10 months sort of thing by the Taliban. So strategic momentum appears to be sort of with the Taliban. The Afghan security forces, though, are consolidating their forces. So part of this is they're giving up district centers in order to consolidate their forces because they're taking an approach to protect the population. And most of the population lives in the provincial capitals and the capital city of Kabul.
Assistant Secretary for Defense David F. Helvey recently testified before a congressional committee that the Biden administration believes leaving Afghanistan will still allow them to prosecute the war on terror.
The administration assessed that the threat from violent extremist organizations against the United States, now emanating from Afghanistan, can be addressed without a persistent U.S. military presence in that country. And at the same time, we'll work closely with the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces, or ANDSF, and with our allies and our partners to maintain counterterrorism capabilities in the region sufficient to ensure that Afghanistan cannot become a safe haven for terrorists to threaten our security. In this context, and in coordination with our Afghan and international partners, we're working to reposition our counterterrorism capabilities, including by retaining assets in the region to prevent a reemergence of a terrorist threat to the United States homeland from Afghanistan, and to hold the Taliban to its commitments to ensure that al-Qaeda does not once again gain a foothold there, or that ISIS or any other terrorist group could use Afghanistan as a base to attack us.
But when the current Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, spoke at Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska on July 24th, he didn't sound too convinced.
In terms of whether or not it will stop the Taliban, I think the first thing to do is to make sure that they can slow the momentum and then be able to put themselves in a position where they can retake some of the gains that the Taliban, some of the ground that they've lost. So I think from my engagements with the Afghan leadership, they are committed to that, and so we look forward to them making progress.
And Afghans who worked for NATO fear for their lives.
We are not safe. The Taliban, they're telling us, your brothers leaving soon your country, and we will kill all of you guys that have worked with the U.S. forces.
I have to go all the areas, not have exactly place to stay there. Because if I stay in a place for like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, the Taliban gonna find me and they kill me.
If I haven't done faithful and good service for the U.S. Army, why they have given me this medal.
Hundreds of Afghan interpreters are begging for asylum outside the last remaining U.S. base in Kabul.
All the foreign troops completely withdraw from Afghanistan, and after that, if we target by Taliban, if we kill it, if we get killed by Taliban, who's responsible for us? So that's why we are asking for justice. Again, we are raising our voice. We are asking for our safety and protection.
And the former commander of Bagram Air Base says they've earned it.
We have got to move those interpreters or translators, all the people that aided America for 20 years, move them out of that country and give them a life in America, right? They earned it.
Schlosser details his 15 months in Afghanistan in his new book, Marathon War.
We effectively decided that we were going to end the combat portion of the war several years ago. When it comes time that when America decides that it's not going to send its combat-trained troops into combat, then it's time to move them on out. I could see the handwriting on the wall, to be quite frank with you. The level of corruption I had not anticipated. And I did not prepare myself for that or my troops for the level of corruption that we saw. And a part of it, I lay out in Marathon War. President Karzai was just beating me through Minister of Defense there, Wardak, to ensure that there were no civilian casualties at all. The Taliban would go out and blow up something and kill a bunch of civilians, and Karzai would say nothing. And then we would have one or two civilians killed by mistake in a air support piece, close air support or something like that. Anyway, we always apologize, go do the normal thing that's expected in Afghanistan, but he would beat the heck out of us.
And while former Afghan President Hamid Karzai has been highly critical of the U.S. role in Afghanistan,
their presence is what we have now. So we don't want what we have now. We don't want to continue with this misery and indignity that we are facing when our children die in front of their schools.
At least the current president, Ashraf Ghani, paid tribute to the sacrifices that the United States has made for his country.
Let me pay tribute to those Americans who paid the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan. Their exact number is 2,448, and over 1 million American men and women in uniform who during the last 20 years have served to protect your security and our freedom. This has been a major partnership where the United States is not spared anything in blood or treasure.
We were making the best we could possibly do with the set of what I would say goals that sounded right. They sounded like it made sense, but it's one of those things where if you looked at the history of Afghanistan, it was probably way too much to expect a military of any type, of any capability to actually do.
And his outlook on the future of Afghanistan is grim.
Civil war, Taliban regains a lot of the control of the country. Eventually, it will have all of it, I think, over time, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. I don't think that the Afghan army will be able to hold against the Taliban, but you're going to see this human diaspora, much larger than the one that we are currently contemplating with our interpreters and their families.
Despite the recent increases in violence, things have gotten better in Afghanistan since I started coming here, at least back in 2007, 2008. You can look at factors like the infant mortality rate, which has gone way down. Gross domestic product is 5 times what it used to be. And life expectancy, which was only 43 years, is now in the mid-60s. So things are getting better, but the concern is that if the U.S. leaves precipitously, it could cause a lot of those gains to be reversed. Despite the Taliban resurgence, Schlosser doesn't believe American blood and treasure were wasted there.
Soldiers don't win or lose wars based upon what they're doing tactically. You can win many battles. Wars are decided over a period of time because about politics. It's all about politics. For 20 years, we have not been attacked by al-Qaeda on our soil. That alone meant sacrifices that were important, and we should not forget that.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media.
Copyright 2021.